In the 1976 Montreal Olympics, East Germany exceeded all expectations, ranking 3rd overall in the medal standings for a country of only 17 million. The East German women's swimming team was particularly impressive, winning 11 of the 13 gold medals. However, something wasn't right. Not only because the East German women's swimming team hadn't won any gold medals at the previous Olympics in Munich, but journalists also started to question the strangely deep voices of their broad-shouldered female athletes. Although doping in the Olympics had been an ongoing concern throughout the 20th century, cases were few and far between, with athletes caught using drugs such as amphetamines and alcohol before or during events. It wasn't until 1968 that the use of male hormones was suspected, with the female shot putters having a particularly androgenic phenotype. These concerns were heeded by the International Olympic Committee, who feared such drug use allegations would bring the Games into disrepute. As such, the 1976 Olympics was the first Games to test for anabolic steroids, and surprisingly, the East German women all tested negative. With no concrete evidence, these doping claims were dismissed, and the East Germans would continue to dominate women's swimming for over a decade. They maintained East Germany's image as a sporting nation and proved the superiority of the socialist system as a better and more humane way. That is until the 9th of November 1989, when the Berlin Wall and the facade of this socialist paradise all came crumbling down. When the Berlin Wall fell, reunifying East and West Germany, information about state-sponsored doping was leaked to the Western press. Despite efforts by the East German government to destroy all evidence of their activities, it appears their tooth comb was not fine enough. Not only were documents found in the Medical Academy of the National People's Army in East Berlin, but the deputy director and chief physician of the National Doping System, Manfred Hoppner, sold the most incriminating evidence to Stern magazine. The information revealed was disturbing. For nearly 25 years, the East German government had been administering anabolic steroids to its athletes under the guise of vitamins and supplements. Researchers quickly realized that women have the greatest advantage from treatments with anabolic hormones, especially with junior athletes, resulting in girls as young as 14 being given anabolic steroids. As abhorrent and immoral as it was, their research laid the foundations for our knowledge on performance-enhancing drugs, their formulations, doses, timings, evading drug tests, and side effects. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what those side effects are. Some of them you can see, but many of them you can't. And what, if anything, can be done to treat them. This video is going to cover the masculinizing side effects of anabolic steroids, as well as those that uniquely occur in women, starting with the most obvious and visible, and ending with those that, as an outsider, you would have absolutely no idea about. If you'd like to know more about the general side effects of anabolic steroids, like on the cardiovascular system, skin, tendons, these are all covered in separate videos on my channel. Now, the full name for steroids used in the context of enhancing athletic performance is anabolic androgenic steroids. And as you can tell by their name, they have two effects. They are anabolic, meaning they stimulate reactions that convert smaller molecules into large molecules, and they are androgenic, meaning they induce and maintain masculine characteristics. And it's the androgenic effects of steroids that cause the most issues for female athletes. The medical term for when a female develops male characteristics is virilization. Virilis is Latin for masculine. Perhaps the most immediately obvious sign of virilization in women who take anabolic steroids is in their faces. Although the effects can be subtly seen in East German athletes such as Andreas Krieger, it is especially apparent in modern day female bodybuilders. As you can see, their faces display far more masculine characteristics, such as having a greater facial width to height ratio, a stronger jawline, and stronger cheekbones. This phenomenon was actually demonstrated by a study on female to male transsexuals, wherein participants started taking testosterone after the age of 18 for a minimum of 3 years. The study found that after treatment with testosterone, the proportion of participants that were perceived as male by most observers increased from 32% to 95.5%. Notable structural changes include a widened upper jaw and midface, a narrower nasal width, and coarser skin texture. The authors attribute these changes to hypertrophy of the facial muscles, as well as redistribution of the facial fat, resulting in hollower cheeks and more angular facial features. Another telltale sign of anabolic steroid use in women is their voices become significantly deeper and more hoarse.
So on my last video, I was eating chicken and potatoes, and I ended up with about 300,000 views. They're still going on. And the biggest comment that I got out of the whole thing was my voice.
This occurs because testosterone stimulates thickening of the vocal cords, meaning they vibrate at a lower frequency and therefore produce a lower pitch sound. This change can occur extremely quickly, with a case study finding that a woman who took 50 milligrams of nandrolone for only 6 weeks developed voice changes within 8 weeks. The third side effect of anabolic steroids in women that you may not have noticed is they change the density and distribution of women's hair. Now, this occurs because testosterone is converted to its more potent metabolite, dihydrotestosterone, by an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase. On the scalp, DHT stimulates miniaturization of the hair follicles, causing the hair to fall out. This results in male pattern baldness, which is medically referred to as androgenic alopecia. Conversely, on the rest of our body, DHT stimulates vellus hair follicles, which produce the peach fuzz-like hairs that cover most of our body, to differentiate into terminal hair follicles, which produce the thick, pigmented body hair. This results in excess hair growing on the face and the rest of the body, which is medically referred to as hirsutism. However, female bodybuilders often cover up these side effects using a wig and by shaving. Another side effect that you may not be aware of is that anabolic steroids cause the breasts to shrink. This occurs because when women take anabolic steroids, their estrogen to androgen ratio decreases, and this has two effects. It not only causes the breast lobules to atrophy, but it also causes women to take on an android fat distribution, where fat is deposited around the abdomen, as opposed to a gynoid distribution where fat is deposited around the breasts, buttocks, and thighs. Many female bodybuilders compensate for this side effect by getting breast implants. The fifth side effect of anabolic steroids in women is they cause their clitoris to enlarge, which is medically referred to as cliteromegaly. To understand why this happens, we first need to look at some embryology, which is the study of how embryos develop. So male and female genitalia are actually derived from the same structure called the primordial phallus. At about 9 weeks gestation, boys start to produce testosterone, which stimulates the primordial phallus to differentiate into a penis. Whereas in girls, since they produce significantly less testosterone, their primordial phallus continues to form a clitoris. This explains why the clitoris grows in particular when women take anabolic steroids. The final side effect of anabolic steroids that, as an outsider, you would have absolutely no idea about is that they cause women's periods to become irregular or stop altogether. This means that women essentially become infertile whilst taking anabolic steroids. To understand why this happens, it's helpful to know about a feedback mechanism called the HPG axis, which I've covered in detail in this video. Essentially, anabolic steroids signal to the brain that there are already plenty of sex hormones in the blood, and therefore there is no need to produce any more. As such, the brain stops releasing important hormones called stimulating hormones, which not only stimulate the ovaries to produce estrogen, but also stimulate the ovaries to release an egg into the womb. Therefore, with no egg in the womb, there is nothing to fertilize. As a quick side note, this is actually the exact mechanism behind hormonal contraception in women. If you look at the full name for levonorgestrel, which is the drug present in the progesterone-only pill, it's 17-alpha ethinyl, 18-methyl, 19-nortestosterone, which, as you can see, is a 19-nortestosterone analog. This explains the androgenic side effects of the progesterone-only pill, such as acne, weight gain, and hirsutism. So what happens when women stop taking anabolic steroids? Well, this is the most unfortunate part of the story. Although women's periods do return to normal once they stop anabolic steroids, and to an extent the same is true with their faces, all of the other side effects are irreversible. This is shown in the GDR athletes such as Andreas Krieger, who ultimately underwent a sex change due to being unable to reconcile her gender identity and body image. Ultimately, any treatment would be purely cosmetic, such as through waxing and surgical augmentation like I previously mentioned. So I hope any woman who is watching this video and considering taking anabolic steroids really thinks through their decision.